Good evening, and welcome to Mystic Bedtime Stories. I'm your narrator for this evening's journey into the realm of ancient mysteries and forgotten lands. If you found your way here tonight, perhaps you're seeking that gentle escape from the busy thoughts of the day. A quiet harbor where your mind can rest and drift peacefully toward sleep. Tonight, we have something truly special waiting for you. Over the next 2 hours, we'll be traveling together to one of the most enigmatic places ever whispered about in human memory. A land that exists somewhere between history and dream, between the pages of ancient texts and the depths of our collective imagination. Before we begin our journey, let me remind you that this channel is your sanctuary for peaceful bedtime stories. Here, we explore the gentle mysteries of our world, the forgotten corners of history, and the timeless tales that have captured human hearts for centuries. Each story is crafted to ease your mind, slow your thoughts, and guide you gently toward restful sleep. So please, get comfortable in your favorite spot. Perhaps adjust your pillows, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to simply be present for this moment. Now, close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, and imagine yourself slowly drifting away from wherever you are right now. Feel yourself becoming lighter, as if you're floating on the gentlest of currents, carried by something invisible and warm. The sounds of your day begin to fade, replaced by something much softer, something that seems to come from very far away. Can you hear it? That distant whisper on the wind? It carries with it the scent of pine forests dusted with snow, the crystalline clarity of mountain air, and something else. Something that speaks of a place where time moves differently, where the very air itself seems touched by magic. This is the call of Hyperborea, a land that has beckoned to dreamers and seekers for over 2,000 years. Tonight, as the modern world grows quiet around you, we're going to follow that whisper northward, beyond the reach of ordinary maps, beyond the boundaries of what most consider possible, to a realm where the sun never quite sets, and the boundaries between myth and reality grow beautifully, peacefully blurred. Some say Hyperborea was nothing more than the imagination of ancient Greek poets, spinning tales around their fires on cold winter nights. Others believe it was a memory, preserved in the deepest part of human consciousness, of a time when the world was younger, and the northern reaches of our earth were warm with perpetual summer. But tonight, as we embark on this journey together, the question of whether Hyperborea truly existed becomes less important than the peace it can bring to your restless mind. For in the end, the most powerful places are often those that live in the space between sleeping and waking, in that gentle twilight where stories become as real as the pillow beneath your head. So let us begin where all the best journeys begin, not with a destination in mind, but with the simple willingness to follow wherever the path may lead. Tonight, that path winds northward through forests of silver birch and valleys where wildflowers bloom despite the snow, toward a horizon that glows with the soft, eternal light of the midnight sun. Are you ready to listen to the whispers of Hyperborea? Then take another deep breath. Let your shoulders relax completely and allow yourself to be carried away on the wings of this ancient story. We have nowhere to be but here, nothing to do but listen, and all the time in the world to wander through this most mysterious of all earthly paradises. Our story begins, as so many of the most beautiful stories do, in ancient Greece, where poets and philosophers gathered in marble courtyards and spoke in hushed, reverent tones about a land that lay beyond the north wind, a place they called Hyperborea, which means simply beyond Boreas, beyond the harsh winter winds that brought cold and darkness to their world. But in this land beyond the north wind, they whispered, there was no winter at all. Let us walk together now through those ancient courtyards and listen to the first whispers of this most enchanting mystery. Picture yourself walking through the sun-dappled courtyards of ancient Athens, where the marble columns cast long shadows in the afternoon light. The air is warm here, scented with olive blossoms and the distant salt of the Aegean Sea. But the scholars and poets who gather in these peaceful spaces speak not of their own Mediterranean warmth, but of something far more wondrous. They speak of a land where warmth is eternal, where the very concept of winter does not exist. The name they give to this place rolls off their tongues like poetry itself, Hyperborea. Hyper meaning beyond, and Boreas, the fierce north wind that brings winter's bite to their world. But beyond that wind, they tell us, beyond the reach of its icy breath, lies a paradise that defies everything we think we know about the natural world. In the fragments of poetry that have survived the passage of millennia, we find traces of these ancient dreams. Pindar, the great lyric poet whose words once echoed through the Olympic Games, wrote of the Hyperboreans as a blessed people who lived in perpetual festival, their days filled with music and dancing, their hearts knowing neither toil nor war. He described them as beings who had discovered the secret of perfect happiness, dwelling in a land where the harsh realities of mortal existence simply did not apply. These were not ordinary mortals, the Greeks believed, but something more. The Hyperboreans were said to live for 1,000 years, their bodies unmarked by age or disease, their spirits untouched by the sorrows that plague the rest of humanity. When death finally came to them, it was not as an enemy to be feared, but as a friend to be welcomed, a gentle transition chosen in their own time, often by leaping joyfully from a sacred cliff into the welcoming embrace of the sea below. Imagine, if you will, what it would feel like to live in such a place. Picture yourself waking each morning not to the harsh sound of an alarm, but to the gentle whisper of an eternal breeze that carries with it the fragrance of flowers that bloom year-round. The sun above you never grows harsh or burning, but maintains that perfect warmth of a late spring morning, that golden quality of light that photographers spend their lives trying to capture. The Greeks spoke of the Hyperborean landscape as something beyond earthly beauty. There were mountains there, they said, but mountains made of crystal that caught and scattered the eternal sunlight into rainbows that danced across valleys carpeted with flowers. There were forests of trees that bore fruit in all seasons, their branches heavy with abundance that never diminished no matter how much was gathered. And through it all flowed rivers of water so pure and sweet that a single sip could restore youth to the aged and bring perfect health to the sick. But perhaps most remarkably, these ancient accounts describe the Hyperboreans themselves not as isolated in their paradise, but as deeply connected to the wider world through their devotion to Apollo, the god of light and music. According to the stories, the Hyperboreans were Apollo's most beloved worshippers, and their connection to him was so profound that they served as his earthly representatives during the winter months when he journeyed away from Delphi. The sacred gifts that the Hyperboreans sent to Apollo's temple were legendary, wrapped in wheat straw and carried by young maidens of extraordinary beauty. These offerings would travel from the northern paradise all the way to the Greek island of Delos, Apollo's birthplace. The journey itself was said to be blessed, with each person who received the sacred bundle becoming temporarily touched by the divine light of the north. Some accounts speak of actual Hyperborean visitors to the Greek world. These mysterious figures were described as beings of unusual height and beauty, with golden hair that seemed to hold its own light and eyes the color of the summer sky. When they spoke, their voices were said to carry the harmony of the spheres, and their presence brought with it a sense of profound peace that could calm even the most troubled heart. As you listen to these ancient whispers, allow yourself to feel what it might have been like to be one of those long-ago Greeks, hearing these stories for the first time. Perhaps you're sitting on a marble bench as the evening light fades, listening to a poet whose words paint pictures of impossible beauty. The warmth of the Mediterranean evening surrounds you, but your imagination is already traveling northward, beyond the known world, toward a place where every day is perfect and every moment touched with wonder. The Greeks understood something profound about the human spirit. They recognized that we all carry within us a longing for something more than the ordinary world can provide. In their stories of Hyperborea, they gave shape to that longing, creating a vision of perfect existence that was neither completely earthly nor entirely divine, but something beautifully, mysteriously in between. And so the whispers began, passed from teacher to student, from poet to dreamer, from generation to generation. Each telling added new details, new wonders, until Hyperborea became not just a place, but a promise that somewhere beyond the harsh winds of winter, beyond the struggles and sorrows of ordinary life, there existed a realm where the human spirit could finally find its true home. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing at the very edge of the world as the ancient Greeks understood it. Behind you lies everything familiar: the olive groves and marble temples, the bustling marketplaces and sun-warmed harbors of the Mediterranean. But ahead of you stretches something entirely different, a horizon that seems to glow with its own inner light, as if the very air itself has been touched by starfire. This is the threshold of Hyperborea, and as you step across it, you find yourself in a land that defies every natural law you thought you understood. The first thing you notice is the light itself. It's not the harsh, blazing light of the desert sun, nor the cold, pale illumination of winter. Instead, it's something altogether more magical, a golden radiance that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, as if the very atoms of the air have learned to sing with luminescence. The ancient poets struggled to describe this phenomenon, reaching for metaphors that could capture something beyond ordinary experience. They spoke of a sun that never set, but also never burned. They described a light that was warm without being hot, bright without being blinding, constant without being monotonous. It was, they said, like living inside the moment just before sunrise, when the sky is painted with the softest gold and the world holds its breath in anticipation of the coming day, except that in Hyperborea, this perfect moment stretches on forever. As your eyes adjust to this eternal dawn, you begin to make out the landscape around you, and what you see takes your breath away. The mountains that rise in the distance are unlike any mountains you've ever imagined. They seem to be carved from pure crystal, their peaks catching and refracting the golden light into countless tiny rainbows that dance and shimmer across their surfaces. Some ancient accounts describe these peaks as being made of amber, that fossilized sunlight that glows from within, and as you watch the way the light plays across their faces, you can almost believe it. At the base of these crystal mountains, vast forests stretch out in all directions, but these are not the dark, shadowy woods of the ordinary world. The trees here are tall and graceful, their leaves shimmering with an inner light that makes them appear to be made of beaten silver. when the eternal breeze moves through their branches. It creates a sound like distant bells, or perhaps like water flowing over smooth stones, a gentle music that seems to ease some deep tension you didn't even know you were carrying. Walking through these silver forests, you come upon clearings carpeted with flowers that bloom in impossible abundance. Here grow blossoms that change color as you watch, shifting from deep purple to sky blue to the softest rose, as if they're reflecting not just the eternal light above, but the very emotions of anyone who looks upon them. The air is thick with their fragrance, a scent so complex and beautiful that it makes you understand why the ancients believed this place to be the birthplace of all perfumes. Between the forests and the crystal mountains, meadows stretch out like green seas, dotted with streams that flow with water so clear and pure, it seems almost luminous. These are the rivers that the poets claimed could restore youth and health. And as you kneel beside one to cup the cool water in your hands, you feel a vitality flow through you that makes every cell in your body sing with life. The water tastes like nothing you've ever experienced, carrying flavors of spring rain and mountain snow, of mineral earth and growing things, all combined into something that seems to nourish not just your body, but your very soul. The ancient geographers, those careful map makers who tried to impose order on their expanding world, placed Hyperborea in the far north, beyond the lands of the Scythians, beyond even the frozen wastes where normal life could not survive. Yet their descriptions of its climate created a beautiful paradox. How could a land so far north be warm? How could flowers bloom in perpetual sunlight in regions where, by all natural law, only ice should exist? Some of the wisest among the ancients suggested that Hyperborea existed in a realm where the ordinary rules of geography did not apply. They proposed that it was a place where the earth itself was different, warmed not by the distant sun alone, but by some inner fire that made the very ground beneath your feet radiate a gentle heat. This would explain the stories of gardens that flourished year-round, of fruit trees that bore their abundance in every season, of warm springs that bubbled up from the earth, even in the midst of eternal snow-covered peaks that surrounded the blessed land like protective walls. As you wander through this impossible landscape, you begin to understand why the ancient poets described it as the dwelling place of happiness itself. There's something about the quality of the light, the music of the wind through the silver trees, the perfect temperature that never varies, that seems to dissolve worry and stress from your mind like mist before the morning sun. Time moves differently here, not in the anxious rush of deadlines and obligations, but in the gentle rhythm of a place where every moment is perfect, and therefore there's no need to hurry toward the next one. The very air you breathe seems lighter somehow, easier to draw into your lungs, as if it's been purified by passing through fields of eternal flowers. Each breath brings with it not just oxygen, but a sense of profound peace, as if the atmosphere itself is infused with some essence of tranquility that seeps into your bloodstream and calms every fiber of your being. In the distance, you can see structures that might be buildings, though they seem to be made of the same luminous material as everything else in this land. They're not the harsh geometric forms of ordinary architecture, but flowing, organic shapes that seem to have grown from the earth itself, their walls glowing softly with that same golden light that illuminates everything in Hyperborea. These are the dwellings of the blessed inhabitants, built not for protection from harsh weather that never comes, but as expressions of beauty and harmony with the eternal landscape around them. As evening approaches, you realize with wonder that there is no evening here, no gathering darkness to signal the end of the day. The light simply continues, unchanging and perfect, creating a sense of timelessness that allows your mind to finally let go of the constant awareness of hours passing, schedules to keep, places you need to be. Here, in this land of eternal light, you can simply exist, simply be present in each golden moment as it unfolds into the next. In the heart of Hyperborea, where the golden light seems most concentrated, stands a temple unlike any other ever built by human hands. Its pillars are not carved marble, but living trees whose bark gleams like polished gold, their branches intertwining overhead to form a natural dome that pulses gently with its own luminescence. This is the sacred sanctuary of Apollo, and it is here that we discover the most beautiful connection between the blessed land and the world beyond its borders. Imagine yourself approaching this living temple as the eternal dawn casts its gentle radiance through the interwoven branches above. The ground beneath your feet is carpeted with petals that seem to have fallen from the sky itself, each one glowing softly with an inner light that dims and brightens in rhythm with your heartbeat. The air here is filled with a music so subtle, you're not sure if you're hearing it with your ears or feeling it resonate in your bones. It's the sound of perfect harmony, the music that the ancients believed held the universe together in its cosmic dance. At the center of this natural cathedral stands an altar that appears to be carved from a single, massive crystal. But as you draw closer, you realize it's not crystal at all, but solidified light itself, somehow given form and substance. Upon this altar burns a flame that casts no shadows, produces no smoke, and consumes nothing. It simply exists, pure and eternal. A fragment of the divine fire that the Greeks believed Apollo carried across the sky each day in his golden chariot. It is around this sacred flame that the most wondrous ritual in all of human history takes place. Once each year, when the light grows even more golden than usual, and the very air seems to shimmer with anticipation, the Hyperboreans gather to select their sacred messengers. These are not ordinary emissaries, but beings chosen for their perfect harmony of body and spirit. Young people whose presence alone seems to bring peace to troubled hearts and whose voices carry the music of the spheres. The selection process itself is a thing of beauty. The candidates gather in the temple at what would be dawn in any other land, but here is simply a deepening of the eternal light. They stand in a circle around the sacred flame, and as they begin to sing, their voices blend into harmonies so pure and perfect that the very trees seem to lean in to listen. The flame upon the altar responds to their music, growing brighter and more radiant, and those who are to be chosen find themselves surrounded by an aura of golden light that sets them apart as the blessed messengers of Apollo. These chosen ones, usually young maidens of extraordinary grace and wisdom, are then prepared for the most sacred journey ever undertaken. The gifts they will carry are not made of gold or precious stones, though they are more valuable than all the treasures of earthly kings. Instead, they bear offerings that embody the very essence of Hyperborea itself. Wheat that grows golden in the eternal light, flowers that never wilt, and water from the sacred springs that can heal both body and soul. But perhaps most precious of all are the offerings of music and poetry, carried not in their hands, but in their hearts and voices. These are songs that have never been heard in the ordinary world, melodies that were born in the harmony between the eternal light and the silver-leafed trees, verses that capture the perfect peace of a land where suffering is unknown. The journey itself becomes a pilgrimage of light across the ancient world, As the messengers travel southward from their blessed homeland, they carry with them something of Hyperborea's essence. The paths they walk become briefly touched with that golden radiance, and the people they encounter along the way speak for years afterward of the profound peace they felt in the presence of these otherworldly travelers. The route they follow is one of the great mysteries of the ancient world. Some accounts speak of a path that leads through forests where the trees gradually lose their silver sheen and the light slowly fades from eternal gold to the ordinary blue of earthly skies. Others describe a journey across seas where the water grows darker the further south they travel, as if the very ocean mourns the increasing distance from the blessed land. At each stopping place along their route, the messengers are received with wonder and reverence. The people of these earthly settlements instinctively recognize something divine in these travelers, though they cannot quite name what it is. Children stop their playing to stare in quiet amazement, while adults find themselves speaking in hushed voices as if in the presence of a living prayer. The sacred bundles that the messengers carry become objects of veneration themselves, wrapped in cloth woven from fibers that seem to hold their own light, sealed with wax that smells of flowers that bloom in no earthly garden. These packages are passed from community to community, with the reverence due to the most sacred relics. Each person who touches them, even briefly, carries away something of Hyperborea's blessing, a moment of that perfect peace that exists beyond the north wind. As the messengers finally reach their destination, the sacred island of Delos, where Apollo was born, they bring with them more than just physical offerings. They carry the very essence of divine contentment, the proof that somewhere in this world there exists a place where the golden age has never ended, where humanity lives as it was always meant to live, in perfect harmony with the divine. The priests who receive these sacred gifts understand that they are witnessing something far more significant than a simple religious ceremony. They are being given tangible proof that the realm of the gods is not separate from the world of mortals, but connected to it by threads of light and love that can never be broken. In the presence of these messengers from the eternal land, they glimpse what paradise truly means, not as an afterlife reward, but as a state of being that exists somewhere beyond the harsh winds of ordinary existence. And when the ceremony is complete and the gifts have been placed upon Apollo's altar, the messengers do not simply disappear back into legend. Instead, they remain for a time in the ordinary world, sharing their songs and stories, healing hearts that have been broken by the sorrows of mortal life, and reminding all who meet them that somewhere beyond the edge of the known world, there exists a place where every day is touched by divine grace. As they finally begin their journey home, following paths that lead ever northward toward the realm of eternal light, they leave behind them a world that has been subtly transformed. For in their wake, they carry with them not just the gratitude of those they have blessed, but new songs learned from earthly sorrows, new understanding gained from witnessing the struggles of mortal hearts. They return to Hyperborea enriched by their journey, bearing gifts of compassion and wisdom to add to the eternal harmony of their blessed homeland. As you drift deeper into this gentle exploration of humanity's most enduring dream, allow your mind to wander across the ancient world, following the invisible paths that connected distant civilizations through their shared longing for paradise. Picture yourself as a traveler moving through time itself, witnessing how the dream of a perfect northern land manifested in cultures separated by vast distances and centuries, yet united by the deep human need to believe that somewhere, somehow, perfection was possible. In the windswept steppes of Scythia, where nomadic peoples followed their herds across endless grasslands beneath enormous skies, the shamans spoke in hushed tones around their flickering fires of a land beyond the northern stars. They called it by different names, but their descriptions painted the same impossible picture. A realm where the grass was always green, despite the eternal snow that surrounded it, where the horses that grazed there were white as starlight and could run across the sky itself. The Scythian tales spoke of great warriors who had journeyed to this blessed land and returned transformed, their eyes holding a depth of peace that no earthly battle could disturb. These warriors became the greatest leaders of their people, not through conquest and violence, but through a wisdom that seemed to flow from some inexhaustible wellspring within them. They could calm storms with a word, heal the sick with a touch, and guide their tribes to safety through the harshest winters with an inner compass that never failed. Moving westward across the mists of time and geography, we find ourselves in the deep forests of Celtic Britain, where druids gathered in sacred groves to preserve the ancient wisdom of their ancestors. Here, too, the dream of a northern paradise took root, though it wore a different face. The Celtic storytellers spoke of the other world, a realm that existed not quite in our world and not quite beyond it, but somewhere in the spaces between. In their gentle Irish voices, the bards would weave tales of Tir na Nog, the land of the young, where no one ever aged and sorrow was unknown. This was a place you could sometimes glimpse on the horizon when the morning mist rose from the lakes, or sense in the singing of certain birds whose melodies seemed to carry messages from another realm entirely. The Celtic vision of paradise was softer than the Greek, more closely woven into the natural world, but it shared that same quality of perfect peace and timeless beauty. The Druids taught that this blessed land lay beyond the ninth wave, in the direction where the sun spent its winter months. Some of their most sacred rituals involved sending messages to this other world, carried by white swans that were said to be the souls of those pure enough to serve as messengers between the realms. These swans would disappear into the northern mists, and when they returned in the spring, they brought with them the promise that renewal was always possible, that no matter how dark the winter of the soul, there was always a place where light endured. As we journey even further through the landscape of human memory, we find ourselves among the Norse peoples of Scandinavia, where the aurora borealis painted the winter skies with rivers of green and gold light. Here, in this land already touched by northern magic, the dream of paradise took on yet another form. The Vikings spoke of Gladsheim, Odin's Hall of Gold, but they also whispered of other realms, places where the harsh realities of their ice-bound world gave way to something softer and more welcoming. In the Norse Eddas, we find references to lands beyond the world tree Yggdrasil, places where the gods themselves would go to find rest and renewal. These were not the warrior halls of Valhalla, with their eternal battles and feasting, but quieter realms where even the gods could lay down their weapons and simply be at peace. The Norse imagination, shaped by long winters and the endless dance of light and darkness across their northern skies, understood perhaps better than any other culture the deep human need for a place where struggle could finally end. But the most mysterious echoes come to us from the ancient traditions of Tibet and the high Himalayas, where monks and mystics spoke of Shambhala, the hidden kingdom that existed somewhere beyond the snowy peaks. Like Hyperborea, Shambhala was described as a realm where spiritual perfection had been achieved, where the inhabitants lived in complete harmony with the natural world and the cosmic forces that governed all existence. The Tibetan descriptions of Shambhala share remarkable similarities with the Greek accounts of Hyperborea. Both were said to be hidden from ordinary sight, protected by mystical barriers that prevented all but the most spiritually pure from finding them. Both were described as places where time moved differently, where the normal processes of aging and decay were slowed or stopped entirely, and both were seen as reservoirs of ancient wisdom, places where the highest truths were preserved against a time when the rest of the world might need them. As you let these parallel visions wash over your consciousness like gentle waves, you begin to sense a pattern emerging from the depths of human experience. These stories, born in cultures that had no contact with each other, separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time, all point toward the same fundamental truth, that somewhere in the collective human heart lives an unshakable conviction that perfection is possible, that paradise is not just a reward for the afterlife, but a real place that exists somewhere in our own world. Perhaps these ancient peoples were drawing from some shared memory, some genetic inheritance passed down from a time when such a place actually existed. Perhaps they were all receiving the same divine inspiration, messages from a realm beyond ordinary reality that whispered to sensitive souls across all cultures and eras. Or perhaps they were simply expressing the deepest longing of the human spirit, the part of us that refuses to accept that this world of struggle and sorrow is all there is. The remarkable consistency of these visions across such diverse cultures suggests something profound about the nature of human consciousness itself. Whether we call it Hyperborea or Tir Nanog, Shambhala, or the other world, we are all reaching toward the same dream. A place where the lion lies down with the lamb, where the eternal spring of the soul can finally bloom without fear of winter's return. As these ancient echoes fade into the gentle silence of memory, we are left with a question that is both haunting and comforting. If so many different peoples, in so many different times and places, have shared this same vision of northern paradise, what does that tell us about the deepest truth of what we are and what we might become? Picture yourself in a candlelit study in Renaissance Florence, where the air is thick with the scent of old parchment and melting wax. Maps cover every surface, their edges weighted down with brass instruments and leather-bound journals filled with careful notes and fading ink. Here, in this sanctuary of learning, a scholar leans over an ancient Greek manuscript, his weathered fingers tracing the lines that speak of a land beyond the north wind. This is the world of the Renaissance seekers. Those extraordinary individuals who looked at the expanding map of their known world and saw not limitations, but invitations. To them, every blank space on a chart was a whispered promise, every ancient legend a potential truth waiting to be uncovered. And among all the mysteries that captured their imagination, none burned brighter than the enigma of Hyperborea. These were not mere dreamers, but serious scholars who approached their quest with the methodical patience of true scientists. They studied wind patterns and ocean currents, analyzed the migration routes of birds, and carefully compared the accounts of ancient writers to search for clues that might have been overlooked by less dedicated minds. In their heated debates and excited correspondence, we can feel the pulse of genuine discovery, the intoxicating possibility that they might be the ones to solve the greatest geographical mystery of the ancient world. One such seeker was Gerardus Mercator, the great Flemish cartographer whose maps would guide sailors for centuries to come. In his private chambers, away from the practical concerns of commercial navigation, Mercator would spread out his most speculative charts and dream of the northern passages that might lead to the legendary land. He had studied the accounts of ancient geographers, noted their descriptions of currents that seemed to flow toward some mysterious northern destination, and wondered if these might be the very pathways that Apollo's messengers had once followed. Mercator's maps from the late 16th century show a remarkable feature at the North Pole, a magnetic mountain surrounded by 4 channels through which all the waters of the northern seas were said to flow. This was not merely speculation on his part, but a careful synthesis of ancient sources and contemporary reports from sailors who claimed to have seen strange lights and unusual currents in the far northern waters. Could this magnetic mountain, he wondered, be the crystal peak that anchored the blessed realm of Hyperborea? As we move through time, following the paths of these dedicated seekers, we encounter figures like John Dee, Queen Elizabeth's mysterious court magician and mathematician. In his tower study at Mortlake, surrounded by crystals and celestial globes, Dee pored over ancient texts in search of the mathematical keys that might unlock the location of the hidden paradise. He believed that Hyperborea was not just a physical place, but a realm that existed at the intersection of geometry and divinity, accessible only to those who could solve the cosmic equations that governed its location. Dee's approach was both mystical and scientific. He studied the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of the earth that changes our view of the stars over thousands of years. Perhaps, he reasoned, Hyperborea had once been visible from more southern latitudes, but had been carried beyond the reach of ordinary navigation by this celestial dance. His calculations suggested that there might be specific times, aligned with certain stellar configurations, when the pathways to the hidden land would briefly open once again. The age of great maritime exploration brought new urgency to the search. As sailors pushed further into the unknown waters of the Arctic Ocean, they returned with tales that seemed to echo the ancient descriptions of the northern paradise. There were reports of mysterious lights that danced on the horizon, of currents that flowed toward some unseen destination, of islands that appeared and disappeared like mirages, always just beyond the reach of their ships. Captain Martin Frobisher, searching for the Northwest Passage in the 1570s, wrote in his journal of moments when the ice-locked seas ahead of him seemed to shimmer with an inner light, as if the very water itself was luminous. His crew reported hearing distant music carried on the Arctic wind, melodies so hauntingly beautiful that grown men wept to hear them. Though Frobisher never claimed to have found Hyperborea, his accounts added new chapters to the growing body of evidence that something extraordinary lay hidden in the northern reaches of the world. Perhaps the most dedicated of all the Renaissance seekers was a Jesuit priest named Athanasius Kircher, whose passion for ancient mysteries led him to compile every reference to northern paradises he could find in the libraries of Europe. Kircher's massive work, Mundus Subterraneus, published in 1665, contained detailed maps showing his best estimate of Hyperborea's location, along with careful analysis of the geological conditions that might allow such a place to exist. Kircher proposed that Hyperborea was heated by vast underground fires, volcanic systems that created a tropical microclimate even in the Arctic regions. He had studied accounts of hot springs in Iceland and Greenland, and theorized that these were merely the visible signs of a much larger geothermal system that could, under the right conditions, maintain an island of eternal spring in the midst of the frozen north. The priest's work was remarkable for its systematic approach. He cataloged every ancient reference to northern lights, unusual weather patterns, and mysterious islands, looking for consistent details that might point to a real geographical location. His correspondence with missionaries and explorers created one of the first international networks dedicated to solving the mystery of the hidden paradise. As the 18th century dawned, the search for Hyperborea began to take on new characteristics. The Age of Enlightenment brought more sophisticated instruments and more systematic exploration, but it also brought a growing skepticism about ancient legends. Yet even among the most rational minds of the period, the dream of Hyperborea continued to exert its mysterious influence. Captain James Cook, during his voyages to the Pacific, made careful notes about unusual atmospheric phenomena he observed in northern waters. Though he never explicitly claimed to be searching for Hyperborea, his journals reveal a man who was always watching for signs of the extraordinary, always ready to investigate any anomaly that might lead to a discovery that would shake the foundations of geographical knowledge. The Romantic poets of the early 19th century brought new energy to the quest, infusing it with emotional passion that complemented the scientific rigor of earlier seekers. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, in his notebooks and unpublished fragments, wrote extensively about his dreams of finding the hidden northern land. He believed that poetry and intuition might succeed where pure reason had failed, that the path to Hyperborea might be found not through careful calculation, but through opening the heart to the whispers of ancient wisdom. As we follow these seekers through the centuries, we begin to understand that their quest was about more than simple geographical discovery. They were searching for proof that the human imagination was not simply a faculty for creating pleasant fantasies, but an instrument capable of perceiving truths that lay beyond the reach of ordinary senses. In seeking Hyperborea, they were really seeking validation of humanity's deepest spiritual intuitions, evidence that our dreams of perfection might have some basis in reality. Their failure to find the physical Hyperborea did not discourage them, but seemed only to deepen their conviction that the mystery was worth pursuing. Each generation of seekers built upon the work of those who came before, refining their theories, improving their methods, and maintaining the bright flame of possibility that had first been kindled in the marble halls of ancient Greece. In their dedication, their careful scholarship, and their refusal to abandon hope in the face of disappointment, these seekers embodied something beautiful about the human spirit. They remind us that the greatest discoveries are often made not by those who are certain they know where they are going, but by those who are willing to follow their deepest intuitions into the unknown, trusting that the journey itself will reveal its own rewards. Imagine yourself now in a different kind of study, one filled not with hand-drawn maps and leather-bound manuscripts, but with geological samples, ice core data, and computer models that can recreate the climate of the Earth as it existed millions of years ago. Here, in the laboratories and research stations of modern science, the ancient dream of Hyperborea finds itself examined through an entirely new lens, one that reveals possibilities that even the most dedicated Renaissance seekers could never have imagined. The story begins with a simple but revolutionary realization that dawned on geologists in the 19th century. As they studied the rocks and fossils of the Arctic regions, they made a discovery that seemed to validate the wildest dreams of the ancient poets. Embedded in the frozen ground of Greenland and Siberia, they found the fossilized remains of tropical plants and trees, evidence that these now desolate lands had once been warm enough to support lush forests and abundant life. Picture yourself walking through one of these Arctic research sites, your breath forming clouds in the bitter cold as you examine a cross-section of permafrost that has been carefully excavated and preserved. There, frozen in the ice for millions of years, are the delicate impressions of fern fronds and palm leaves. the fossilized wood of trees that could only have grown in climates warm and gentle enough to nurture the kind of paradise that the Greeks described in their tales of Hyperborea. The implications of these discoveries rippled through the scientific community like stones thrown into a still pond. If the Arctic had once been warm, if tropical forests had once flourished where now only ice and tundra exist, then perhaps the ancient stories were not pure fantasy after all. Perhaps they were folk memories, distant echoes of a time when human civilization might indeed have found paradise in the far north. Dr. Alfred Wegener, the German scientist who first proposed the theory of continental drift, spent long hours in his Arctic research station contemplating these possibilities. As he studied the movement of the Earth's crustal plates over geological time, he realized that the positions of the continents themselves had been very different in the distant past. What we now think of as the frozen Arctic might once have been located in temperate or even tropical latitudes, warmed by ocean currents that no longer flow in the same patterns. Wegener's notebooks, discovered years after his death in the Greenland ice, contain fascinating speculations about what he called paleoclimatic windows, periods in Earth's history when the arrangement of land and sea, combined with favorable astronomical cycles, might have created pockets of temperate climate in what are now the polar regions. He wondered if these windows might have coincided with the development of early human civilizations, creating the conditions that could have given rise to the legends of northern paradise. As our understanding of climate science deepened through the 20th century, new pieces of the puzzle began to emerge. Ice core samples drilled from the Greenland ice sheet revealed a record of climate change stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, and within this record, scientists found evidence of dramatic warming periods when the Arctic regions experienced temperatures far milder than they do today. Dr. Lonnie Thompson, one of the world's leading ice core researchers, made a remarkable discovery in the 1990s when his team found plant material embedded in ice cores from high Arctic locations. Carbon dating revealed that some of this organic matter was only a few thousand years old, suggesting that periods of significant warming in the north had occurred within the time frame of recorded human history. Could these warming periods, he wondered, have created the conditions that inspired the ancient legends of Hyperborea? The study of ocean currents added another intriguing dimension to the scientific investigation. Oceanographers discovered that the flow patterns of the world's seas had changed dramatically over geological time, and that certain configurations of these currents could create remarkably warm microclimates in otherwise cold regions. The Gulf Stream, which currently brings warm water from the tropical Atlantic to the shores of Western Europe, was found to have followed very different paths in the past, sometimes carrying tropical warmth much further north than it does today. Dr. Wallace Brucker, the Columbia University oceanographer known as the father of climate science, developed computer models that showed how changes in ocean circulation could create what he called thermal oases in the Arctic regions. These would be areas where the combination of warm currents, favorable wind patterns, and specific geographical features could maintain temperate conditions even at very high latitudes. His models suggested that such oases could have persisted for centuries or even millennia under the right conditions. Perhaps most intriguingly, advances in archaeology began to reveal evidence of human presence in Arctic regions at times when conventional wisdom suggested such areas would have been uninhabitable. Excavations in northern Siberia uncovered the remains of sophisticated settlements dating back thousands of years, complete with evidence of agriculture and permanent structures that would have required a climate significantly warmer than what exists in those regions today. The discovery of the Beringia land bridge which once connected Asia and North America across what is now the Bering Strait, provided another tantalizing clue. This vast region, which existed during periods of lower sea level, was found to have supported extensive grasslands and forests during certain climatic periods. Some researchers speculated that Beringia might have served as a northern refuge for both human and animal populations during ice ages, a place of relative warmth and abundance in an otherwise frozen world. As genetic analysis became more sophisticated, scientists began to trace the migration patterns of ancient human populations with unprecedented precision. These studies revealed that there had indeed been periods when human communities thrived in far northern regions, developing unique cultures adapted to environments that may have been very different from what we see in those areas today. Dr. Spencer Wells, director of the Genographic Project, made a startling discovery when his team analyzed the DNA of indigenous peoples from Arctic regions. The genetic markers suggested that these populations had experienced a period of rapid expansion and development several thousand years ago, followed by a gradual retreat southward. This pattern was consistent with the idea that favorable climate conditions in the north had once supported larger and more complex societies than conventional archaeology had previously imagined possible. The study of volcanic activity added yet another layer to the scientific investigation. Researchers found that periods of intense volcanic activity in the Arctic regions, particularly in Iceland and the Aleutian Islands, had sometimes created localized warming effects that could last for centuries. The geothermal energy released by these volcanic systems could theoretically maintain warm microclimates even during periods of global cooling, creating islands of habitability in otherwise harsh environments. As you absorb these scientific revelations, you begin to sense how the boundaries between myth and possibility have shifted. The ancient Greeks, with their intuitive understanding of the world, may have been describing something far more real than anyone in modern times had dared to imagine. Their paradise beyond the north wind might not have been pure fantasy, but a cultural memory of actual conditions that once existed in the high Arctic, conditions that could have supported the kind of advanced, peaceful civilization that they described in their tales of Hyperborea. The implications stretch far beyond the validation of ancient legends. If such paradises did exist in the past, if human civilization once flourished in regions that are now locked in ice, then our entire understanding of human history and potential might need to be reconsidered. Perhaps the dream of Hyperborea is not just a beautiful myth, but a reminder of possibilities that once were real and could, under the right conditions, become real again. As the gentle rhythm of scientific discovery continues its patient work of revelation, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of a new kind of mystery. The question is no longer whether Hyperborea could have existed, but whether we have the wisdom to recognize the signs of its passing and the courage to dream of its return. Settle back now into the gentle embrace of your most comfortable position, and let your mind drift through the great gallery of human creativity, where the dream of Hyperborea has served as an eternal muse for countless artists, writers, and visionaries. Here, in the realm of imagination made manifest, the northern paradise has found perhaps its most enduring and beautiful expression. Picture yourself walking through the hushed halls of a great library at twilight, when the last rays of golden sunlight slant through tall windows and illuminate the spines of thousands of books. Each volume contains its own world, its own vision of what might be possible, and among them, scattered like seeds of light through the vast garden of literature, are countless retellings and reimaginings of the Hyperborean dream. In the romantic poetry of the 18th and 19th centuries, Hyperborea bloomed like a flower of pure imagination. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, in his fragment Christabel and his visionary poem Kubla Khan, painted landscapes that seemed to echo the ancient descriptions of the northern paradise. His pleasure dome in Xanadu, with its walls and towers girdled round, its gardens bright with sinuous rills where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, carries within it the DNA of Hyperborea, that same sense of a perfect realm where nature and spirit exist in flawless harmony. Coleridge understood something profound about the power of these ancient dreams. In his private notebooks, discovered long after his death, he wrote extensively about what he called the Northern Vision, describing it as a kind of spiritual compass that pointed toward humanity's deepest aspirations. He believed that poets were the natural inheritors of the Hyperborean tradition, charged with keeping alive the flame of possibility in a world that had grown too comfortable with limitation. As you drift deeper into this literary landscape, you encounter the haunting visions of Edgar Allan Poe, whose story Mess Found in a Bottle describes a ship carried by supernatural winds toward the South Pole, but whose imagery of otherworldly realms beyond the reach of ordinary navigation clearly draws from the same wellspring that gave birth to Hyperborea. Poe's narrator speaks of being drawn toward some never-before-imagined land, where the laws of physics themselves seem to bend toward wonder. But it was in the 20th century that Hyperborea found its most dedicated literary champion in the person of Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan the Barbarian. Howard's Hyborian Age, a fictional prehistory of our world, placed Hyperborea at the very center of human civilization's most heroic epoch. His descriptions of the Northern Kingdom, with its crystal towers and wise rulers, its warriors who fought not for conquest, but for the preservation of beauty and knowledge, gave new life to the ancient dream, while clothing it in the vigorous language of modern adventure fiction. Howard's Hyperborea was not the peaceful paradise of Greek legend, but something more complex and psychologically realistic. It was a realm where perfection was not given freely, but had to be constantly earned through courage, wisdom, and the willingness to stand against the forces of darkness that always threatened to overwhelm the light. In this reimagining, the Northern Paradise became not an escape from the struggles of mortal existence, but a vision of what those struggles could achieve when directed toward the highest purposes. The influence of Howard's vision can be traced through decades of fantasy literature that followed. Authors like J.R.R. Tolkien, though drawing from different mythological sources, created realms like Valinor and the Undying Lands that carried within them the same essential promise of Hyperborea, that somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary maps, there existed places where the fundamental harmony between spirit and matter had never been broken. Tolkien's description of the Grey Havens, from which ships departed for the Undying Lands, carries particular resonance with the ancient Hyperborean tradition. Like the Greek accounts of Apollo's messengers, Tolkien's elves journey between the blessed realm and the world of mortals, carrying with them something of that eternal light that transforms everything it touches. The very language Tolkien uses to describe these departures, the sense of sailing not just across physical distance, but into a different order of existence entirely, echoes the deepest themes of the Hyperborean mystery. In the visual arts, painters and illustrators have long been drawn to the challenge of depicting a realm that exists at the very limits of imagination. The pre-Raphaelite painters of the 19th century, with their luminous canvases and otherworldly subjects, often seem to be painting scenes from some northern paradise. Edward Burne-Jones's series, The Golden Stairs, depicts ethereal figures descending a spiral staircase that seems to connect earthly reality with some higher realm. While his landscapes glow with that same eternal golden light that the ancients described as characteristic of Hyperborea. The Russian painter Nicholas Roerich, who spent much of his career exploring the mystical traditions of Asia, created a series of canvases depicting what he called the Northern Citadel. These paintings, with their crystalline peaks and aurora-lit skies, their sense of vast spaces filled with spiritual presence, capture something essential about the Hyperborean vision that words alone cannot convey. Roerich believed that art was humanity's most direct means of communication with the transcendent realms, and his northern landscapes serve as windows into possibilities that exist beyond the reach of ordinary perception. In music, composers have long sought to capture the ethereal quality of the northern paradise. Jan Sibelius, the great Finnish composer, created tone poems like Finlandia and The Swan of Tuonela that seem to carry within their melodies the very sound of eternal spring in a northern land. His music captures something ineffable about the Hyperborean experience, that sense of vast spaces filled with gentle light, of time moving differently, of profound peace underlying all existence. The modern fantasy genre has embraced Hyperborea with particular enthusiasm, creating countless variations on the theme of hidden northern realms where advanced civilizations flourish in impossible climates. From the Chronicles of Narnia, where eternal winter gives way to eternal spring, to the complex mythologies of contemporary fantasy epics, the influence of the ancient Greek vision continues to shape how we imagine the possibilities of our world. But perhaps the most profound expression of the Hyperborean tradition in modern times can be found in the writings of the mystics and spiritual teachers who have used the ancient symbol to point toward states of consciousness rather than geographical locations. These visionaries understood that Hyperborea was never really about finding a perfect place on earth, but about discovering the perfect place within the human soul. That inner realm where the eternal spring of the spirit can bloom regardless of external circumstances. Paramahansa Yogananda, the great Indian spiritual teacher who brought yoga to the West, often spoke of what he called the soul's true home, describing it in terms that clearly echoed the ancient descriptions of Hyperborea. He taught that every human being carries within their consciousness a memory of this perfect realm, and that the longing for Hyperborea is actually the soul's recognition of its own divine nature, calling it home. As you allow these artistic visions to wash over your consciousness like gentle waves, you begin to understand that the true power of Hyperborea lies not in its potential existence as a physical place, but in its role as what Carl Jung would have called an archetype, a fundamental pattern in the human psyche that gives form to our deepest aspirations. Whether expressed in poetry or painting, in music or mystical vision, the northern paradise serves as a constant reminder that the human imagination is not merely a faculty for entertainment, but an organ of perception capable of glimpsing truths that lie beyond the reach of ordinary senses. In every age, in every culture where the Hyperborean vision has taken root, it has served the same essential function: to keep alive the flame of possibility, to remind us that no matter how limited our current circumstances might seem, there exists somewhere in the realm of potential a perfect expression of what we might become. This is the eternal gift of literature and art, to serve as custodians of humanity's highest dreams, and to ensure that those dreams never quite fade from memory, no matter how dark the times through which we must pass. Close your eyes now, and let your breathing slow to match the gentle rhythm of a distant tide. As your mind settles into deeper stillness, begin to listen not just with your ears, but with that inner sense that can perceive harmonies beyond the reach of ordinary hearing. For we are about to explore the most mysterious aspect of the Hyperborean legend, the music that was said to emanate from that blessed land like light streaming from a hidden sun. The ancient Greeks spoke often of the sounds that could be heard coming from the direction of the northern paradise. These were not the harsh noises of wind and storm that characterized the ordinary Arctic, but something altogether more sublime. Sailors reported hearing melodies of indescribable beauty, carried on currents of air that seemed warmer and gentler than any natural breeze. These sounds were said to have the power to heal hearts broken by loss, to calm minds troubled by fear, and to awaken in even the most earthbound souls a memory of their divine origins. Picture yourself standing on a cliff top overlooking the northern sea, wrapped in the soft warmth of an evening that never quite becomes night. The horizon glows with that peculiar golden light that marks the threshold between the ordinary world and the realm of Hyperborea. As you stand there, perfectly still and receptive, you begin to hear it. A sound so subtle at first that you're not sure whether it's real or imagined. It begins as a whisper, like the gentlest possible movement of air through silver chimes. But as your attention focuses on this barely perceptible music, it seems to grow richer and more complex, revealing layer upon layer of harmonies that weave together into something that touches the very core of your being. This is not music as we ordinarily understand it. Not melodies created by human voices or instruments, but the sound of existence itself when it achieves perfect balance and harmony. The wind that carries this celestial music is unlike any earthly breeze. It moves with a consciousness of its own, seeking out every flower, every tree, every crystalline peak in the northern paradise, and drawing from each its own unique note, its own contribution to the vast symphony of creation. When this wind passes through the forests of silver-leafed trees, it creates harmonies that seem to contain within them all the songs that have ever been sung and all the songs that ever could be sung. Ancient accounts describe different types of musical phenomena associated with Hyperborea, each one representing a different aspect of the paradise's essential nature. There was the morning song, heard at what would be dawn in any ordinary land, a melody of such pure joy and optimism that it could lift the spirits of anyone fortunate enough to hear it, filling them with unshakable confidence in the essential goodness of existence. Then there was the noon radiance, not exactly music in the conventional sense, but more like a humming that seemed to emerge from the very atoms of the air when the golden light reached its peak intensity. This was the sound of perfect contentment, of a world where every need was met and every desire fulfilled, not through struggle and competition, but through the natural abundance that flowed from living in complete harmony with the underlying rhythms of creation. The evening contemplation was perhaps the most profound of all the Hyperborean sounds. As the eternal light softened into its gentlest expression, listeners reported hearing what they could only describe as the sound of infinite peace. This was not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of completion, the deep quiet that exists at the heart of all true music, the space between the notes that gives meaning to every melody. But it was the night blessing that most captured the imagination of those who studied the Hyperborean mystery. Though night never truly came to the northern paradise, there were times when the light grew especially gentle and golden, and during these periods, the very air seemed to sing lullabies of such tenderness and beauty that they could ease any pain, comfort any sorrow, and guide even the most troubled soul into the deepest and most restorative sleep. Modern science has given us fascinating insights into how such phenomena might be possible. We now understand that ice, when it forms under certain conditions, can create structures that act like vast musical instruments. The aurora borealis, those curtains of light that dance across the polar skies, actually do produce sounds, infrasonic vibrations that are below the threshold of human hearing, but can still affect our emotional and physical well-being in profound ways. Researchers studying the acoustic properties of Arctic environments have discovered that under specific atmospheric conditions, sounds can be carried across vast distances with almost no distortion, creating effects that early explorers might well have interpreted as supernatural music. The crystalline clarity of extremely cold, dry air can preserve and transmit musical tones with a purity that seems almost otherworldly to ears accustomed to the acoustic dampening effects of more temperate climates. But perhaps the most intriguing scientific discovery relates to the way that certain geological formations can act as natural resonators. Scientists have found that some types of crystal formations, when subjected to temperature changes or electromagnetic fields like those generated by the aurora, can produce sustained tones of remarkable clarity and beauty. If Hyperborea did indeed feature the crystal mountains and amber peaks described in ancient accounts, it's entirely possible that the entire landscape could have functioned as a vast musical instrument, played by the wind and the subtle energies of the northern lights. As you contemplate these possibilities, allow yourself to imagine what it would feel like to live in a world where music was not something you had to create or seek out, but something that surrounded you constantly as a natural feature of the environment. Picture waking each morning not to harsh alarm sounds, but to melodies that perfectly matched your body's natural rhythms, that seemed to know exactly what your soul needed to hear in order to begin the day in perfect harmony with the world around you. Imagine walking through forests where every tree contributed its own note to an ongoing symphony, where the very ground beneath your feet resonated with rhythms so deep and stable that they seem to connect you directly to the heartbeat of the earth itself. Think of how it would feel to live in a place where the wind itself was a constant friend, always bringing exactly the right music to match your mood, to heal whatever needed healing, to celebrate whatever deserved celebration. The ancient poets understood something profound about the relationship between sound and consciousness. They recognized that music was not merely entertainment, but a direct pathway to transcendence, a technology for transforming ordinary awareness into something higher and more complete. In their descriptions of Hyperborean music, they were really describing what human consciousness sounds like when it achieves perfect attunement with the deepest rhythms of existence. This is why the memory of that celestial music has never faded from human culture. In every tradition, in every age, we find references to the music of the spheres, the cosmic symphony, the divine harmonics that supposedly undergird all of creation. These are not separate concepts from the Hyperborean musical tradition, but variations on the same fundamental theme: the recognition that reality itself is essentially musical in nature, that consciousness and cosmos dance together in patterns of sublime beauty that can be perceived by those who know how to listen. As the gentle sounds of this exploration begin to fade into the peaceful quiet of deep relaxation, you carry with you something of that eternal music. For the truth is that the winds of Hyperborea are still blowing, still carrying their healing melodies to anyone with ears sensitive enough to hear them. The symphony of wind and ice continues to play, waiting patiently for human hearts to quiet themselves enough to receive its transforming gift of perfect peace. Let yourself sink now into the deepest layer of this gentle exploration, where individual consciousness begins to merge with something vast and collective, something that connects you not just to your own personal history, but to the entire human story stretching back through countless generations. Here, in this profound stillness, we encounter perhaps the most mysterious aspect of the Hyperborean legend, the possibility that it represents not just imagination, but memory. Picture yourself descending through layers of awareness, like a diver moving slowly through the depths of a perfectly clear lake. As you go deeper, the light from the surface grows softer and more golden, taking on that same eternal quality that characterizes the illumination of the northern paradise. With each level you descend, you feel yourself connecting with older and older aspects of human experience, until finally you reach a depth where individual memory gives way to something much larger and more ancient. This is the realm that Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, that deep stratum of the human psyche, where we all share the same fundamental patterns, the same archetypal images, the same inherited wisdom of the species. And here, embedded like a jewel in the very foundation of human consciousness, lies the memory of Hyperborea, glowing with a light that has never dimmed despite the passage of millennia. As you rest in this profound depth of awareness, you begin to sense something remarkable. The longing for Hyperborea that you feel is not just your own personal yearning, but something you share with every human being who has ever lived. It is the homesickness of the soul, the deep recognition that we are not quite where we belong, that somewhere in the vast expanse of possibility there exists a place that would feel like coming home. This recognition brings with it images that seem to rise from the very depths of genetic memory. You see vast ice sheets retreating, revealing lands of impossible beauty that had been hidden beneath frozen seas. You glimpse nomadic peoples following migration routes that led them through corridors of warmth in what is now the frozen Arctic, establishing settlements in valleys protected by walls of ice and warmed by hot springs that bubbled up from the Earth's core. These are not ordinary memories, but something deeper and more elusive. They have the quality of dreams, but dreams that feel more real than waking life. They carry within them the emotional signature of actual experience, the kind of deep satisfaction that comes only from having lived in perfect harmony with one's environment, from having known what it feels like when every need is met, not through struggle, but through abundance freely given. Dr. Stanislav Grof, the pioneering researcher in consciousness studies, discovered through his work with expanded states of awareness that many people spontaneously access what appear to be memories of life in paradise-like environments. These memories have remarkable consistency across cultures and individuals, suggesting that they may represent something more than personal fantasy. Grof's subjects frequently described experiences of living in northern regions characterized by eternal spring, crystalline architecture, and communities organized around principles of perfect harmony and cooperation. What makes these memories particularly intriguing is their emotional quality. Unlike ordinary dreams or fantasies, they carry with them a profound sense of loss, a grief so deep and ancient that it seems to permeate the very structure of human consciousness. It is as if some part of us remembers being cast out of paradise, not through any moral failing, but simply through the inexorable changes of climate and geography that made our original home uninhabitable. Imagine feeling, for just a moment, the weight of this ancient sorrow. Picture yourself standing at the edge of what was once the most beautiful place on Earth, watching as the ice advances year by year, forcing you and your people to migrate ever southward in search of lands that could sustain life. Feel the heartbreak of leaving behind crystal cities and silver forests, warm valleys and flowing streams, knowing that you may never see their like again. But within this grief lives something equally profound, a promise. The memory of Hyperborea carries within it not just the pain of loss, but the absolute certainty that such perfection is possible, that the human spirit is capable of creating conditions of genuine paradise on earth. This is perhaps the most important gift that the Hyperborean memory offers to our troubled world, the unshakable conviction that harmony is our natural state, that conflict and suffering are aberrations that can be overcome. Indigenous peoples from Arctic regions around the world carry oral traditions that echo remarkably with the classical descriptions of Hyperborea. The Inuit speak of Sedna's realm, a place beneath the ice where eternal summer reigns and all beings live in perfect balance. The Siberian shamans tell of the upper world, a place of crystal mountains and singing winds that can be reached only by those who know the proper songs and ceremonies. These traditions share a common thread, the understanding that paradise is not lost forever, but simply hidden, waiting for humanity to remember the proper relationship with the natural world that would allow us to return to our original home. They speak of a time that will come when the ice will retreat once again, when the warm currents will return to the northern seas, when the crystal cities will emerge from their long sleep to welcome home the children of humanity who have learned to live in harmony with the earth. Perhaps this is why the Hyperborean vision has such power to move us. Even in our modern age of technology and scientific rationalism, it speaks to something in us that is older than reason, older than culture, older than the individual ego with its fears and desires. It speaks to the part of us that remembers what home really feels like, what it means to live in a world where every sunrise brings joy rather than anxiety, where every breath is an act of communion with the divine essence of existence. As you rest in this space of deep memory, you may find yourself experiencing a kind of reverse nostalgia, a longing not for the past as it was, but for the future as it could be. The memory of Hyperborea is not just about what we have lost, but about what we might regain. It is a genetic blueprint for paradise, encoded in the very structure of human consciousness, waiting to be activated when the conditions are right. This is the profound gift of the Hyperborean mystery. It keeps alive in human consciousness the absolute knowledge that perfection is possible. No matter how dark the times through which we pass, no matter how impossible it seems that humanity could ever transcend its current limitations, somewhere in the depths of our collective memory burns the flame of absolute certainty that we are capable of so much more than we currently imagine. The ancient Greeks understood this when they spoke of Hyperborea not just as a place, but as a state of being. They recognized that the northern paradise represented the potential that lies dormant within every human heart, the capacity for wisdom, compassion, and creative harmony that is our true birthright. In keeping alive the memory of this blessed land, they were really preserving the memory of what we are capable of becoming. As this gentle exploration of forgotten memory draws toward its close, you may find yourself carrying away something precious, the recognition that the longing you feel for a better world is not naive optimism, but ancient wisdom. It is the voice of your deepest self, calling you to remember who you really are and what kind of world you are capable of creating. The memory of Hyperborea lives within you, patient and eternal, waiting for the moment when you are ready to begin the journey home. The golden light is growing softer now. that eternal radiance of Hyperborea beginning to blend with the gentle darkness that signals the end of our shared journey. But this is not really an ending, is it? It is more like the close of a perfect day, when the sun sets not with finality, but with the promise that it will rise again, bringing with it new opportunities for wonder and discovery. As you rest here in this space between worlds, feeling the last whispers of the northern wind beginning to fade into peaceful silence, take a moment to gather the gifts you have received during these hours of exploration. Feel them settling into your heart like seeds of light, ready to bloom in the quiet moments when you need them most. You have traveled tonight through landscapes that exist at the very edge of possibility, walked through forests of silver where every leaf sang with its own perfect note, stood beside rivers whose waters carried the essence of eternal youth. You have witnessed the devotion of Apollo's messengers as they carried sacred offerings across vast distances, their hearts filled with the music of paradise. You have felt the weight of ancient memories stirring in the depths of your consciousness, connecting you to the great human story of loss and hope, exile, and the dream of return. But perhaps most importantly, you have experienced something that cannot be taken away by the ordinary concerns of daily life. You have felt what it is like to exist, even briefly, in a state of perfect peace. You have touched that place within yourself where worry cannot reach, where the eternal spring of the soul blooms regardless of external circumstances. The ancient Greeks who first spoke of Hyperborea understood something profound about the nature of paradise. They knew that it was never really about finding a perfect place somewhere else, but about awakening to the perfection that already exists within the depths of human consciousness. The northern paradise they described so beautifully was really a map of the territory that lies beyond fear, beyond anxiety, beyond all the small concerns that usually occupy our minds. In your travels tonight, you have walked through that territory. You have breathed the clear air of a world where conflict is unknown, where every being exists in harmony with every other being, where the very atoms of existence vibrate with compassion and joy. And though you must soon return to the ordinary world with its challenges and complexities, you carry with you now the absolute knowledge that such harmony is possible. This is the true treasure of Hyperborea, the gift that keeps giving long after the stories have ended and the visions have faded. It is the unshakable certainty that somewhere within the vast expanse of human potential lies the capacity to create heaven on earth, not through force or struggle, not through dominating the natural world or competing with our fellow beings, but through the simple recognition that peace is our natural state and love is the fundamental force that holds the universe together. As the gentle winds from the north begin their final whispered farewell, they carry with them a message that transcends time and space. It is a message that has been passed down through countless generations, from the ancient poets who first dreamed of Hyperborea to the modern seekers who continue to search for paradise in their own hearts. The message is simple, but profound beyond measure. You are already home. The crystal cities you have glimpsed tonight are not located thousands of miles away in some impossible northern landscape. They exist in the clarity of your own deepest awareness, in those moments when your mind becomes still enough to reflect the infinite beauty that surrounds you always. The silver forests through which you have walked grow in the garden of your own consciousness, their leaves rustling with the music of your own inner harmony. The eternal spring of Hyperborea blooms wherever love conquers fear, wherever wisdom transcends ignorance, wherever the human heart opens to its own infinite capacity for compassion. This is why the dream of the northern paradise has never died, why it continues to call to new generations of seekers across the centuries. It is not just a beautiful story, but a blueprint for transformation, a reminder of what becomes possible when we remember who we really are. As you prepare now to return to ordinary consciousness, to the familiar rhythms of breathing and the gentle pull of approaching sleep, you do so as a changed person. You have been touched by something eternal, something that exists beyond the reach of time and circumstance. You have drunk from the sacred springs of Hyperborea, and that water now flows through your veins, carrying with it the promise of perpetual renewal. Tomorrow, when you wake to face whatever challenges the day may bring, you will do so with a secret source of strength. In those moments when the world seems too harsh or too complicated, when the struggles of ordinary life threaten to overwhelm your spirit, you need only close your eyes and remember. Remember the golden light that never fades, the music that plays on winds of perfect peace, the homeland that exists always in the depths of your own being. The messengers of Apollo continue their eternal journey, carrying sacred gifts between the realm of perfect harmony and the world of everyday experience. But now you understand that you are one of those messengers, that every act of kindness, every moment of genuine peace, every word spoken from the heart is an offering laid upon the altar of human transformation. And so, our journey together comes to its gentle close, but the adventure continues in ways you cannot yet imagine. Somewhere beyond the horizon of ordinary awareness, the eternal light of Hyperborea continues to shine, patient and constant, waiting for the moment when all of humanity remembers the way home. The crystal peaks catch the last rays of golden light, the silver forests rustle with their eternal song, and the warm springs continue to flow with their promise of healing and renewal. The northern paradise exists, has always existed, will always exist, in the one place where it can never be lost or taken away, in the infinite depths of the human heart, where love reigns eternal and peace is the only law. Sleep now, gentle traveler, and dream of crystal cities and silver winds. Rest in the knowledge that you are held always in the arms of that great love that moves the stars and flowers with equal tenderness. And know that whenever you need to return to the land beyond the north wind, you need only close your eyes and listen for that distant music that has been calling to you since the beginning of time. The winds of Hyperborea blow gentle and eternal, carrying their blessing across all the worlds, whispering their ancient promise. You are beloved, you are home, you are free. Sweet dreams, dear friend. May your sleep be as peaceful as the eternal spring of the northern paradise, and may you wake refreshed and renewed, carrying with you always the light of that blessed land where winter never comes and love never ends. The journey continues in dreams and beyond dreams, in the infinite adventure of consciousness discovering its own divine nature. Rest well, knowing that somewhere beyond the edge of sleep, Hyperborea waits with open arms to welcome you home. And so we come to the end of tonight's journey together, though perhaps end is not quite the right word. For the stories we share here at Mystic Bedtime Stories are like seeds planted in the fertile soil of dreams, continuing to grow and bloom long after the final words have been spoken. If you've found peace in tonight's exploration of Hyperborea, if the whispers from the northern paradise have brought some measure of calm to your restless thoughts, then our time together has served its purpose. This is what we're here for, night after night, story after story, to create a sanctuary where your mind can find rest and your spirit can remember its own infinite capacity for peace Tonight you've traveled to the land beyond the north wind, but there are so many other mystical realms waiting to be explored together. Ancient temples hidden in forgotten valleys, lost civilizations that knew secrets we're only beginning to rediscover, sacred places where the veil between worlds grows thin and miracles feel as natural as breathing. Each story we share here is another doorway, another invitation to step beyond the ordinary boundaries of everyday consciousness and discover the extraordinary that lives within the depths of your own being. If tonight's story has resonated with you, you might find yourself drawn to explore more of these gentle mysteries with us. Perhaps you'll join us for tales of Lemuria, the lost continent of the Pacific where crystal temples rose from coral gardens and the inhabitants communed directly with the songs of whales and dolphins. Or maybe you'll be called to wander through the moonlit gardens of Avalon, where time moves like honey and every flower holds the memory of ancient magic. We might journey together to the hidden city of Shambhala, nestled somewhere in the high Himalayas, where the wisdom of ages is preserved in libraries carved from living crystal. Or we could drift along the Nile of dreams to the temple of Isis, where the goddess herself whispers the secrets of rebirth and transformation to those who come seeking renewal. These stories are more than entertainment, more than mere fantasy. They are maps to the territories of consciousness that lie beyond the reach of ordinary awareness, guidebooks to the realms of possibility that exist within every human heart. They are reminders that this beautiful, mysterious universe we inhabit is far stranger and more wonderful than we usually allow ourselves to believe. Each night when you return here, you're not just listening to another bedtime story. You're participating in one of humanity's oldest and most sacred traditions, the sharing of wisdom through the magic of narrative, the passing down of truths too deep for ordinary words, too beautiful for everyday language. You're connecting with a lineage that stretches back to the first storytellers who gathered around fires in the darkness and spoke of realms beyond the edges of the known world. Thank you for trusting us with these quiet moments before sleep, for allowing us to be your companions on these gentle journeys into mystery and wonder. Thank you for bringing your open heart and receptive spirit to this sacred space we create together, night after night, story after story. As you drift now toward sleep, carry with you the golden light of Hyperborea, the music of those eternal winds, the promise that somewhere beyond the boundaries of ordinary experience, paradise waits patiently for your return. Let these images and feelings guide you into dreams of crystal cities and silver forests, of warm springs that heal all sorrows and winds that sing with the voices of angels. And when you wake tomorrow, refreshed and renewed, perhaps you'll remember something of what we've shared tonight. Perhaps some small part of you will continue to listen for those whispers from the north, continue to watch for signs that the boundaries between this world and the realm of perfect harmony are not as fixed as they might seem. Until we meet again in this sanctuary of stories, until the next time we journey together into the beautiful unknown, may your sleep be deep and peaceful, your dreams filled with light, and your waking hours touched with the gentle magic that flows from remembering who you really are. This has been another episode of Mystic Bedtime Stories. I'm your narrator, and it's been my profound honor to serve as your guide on tonight's journey to the land beyond the north wind. Sweet dreams, dear listeners, and may the whispers of Hyperborea follow you into the most restorative sleep you've had in ages. Sleep well, dream beautifully, and remember, you are always, always home.